Hi, welcome to another episode of Vivid Q&A. I'm Dave, and our topic today is saltwater fish. All of these questions come to us from our friends on Facebook. Now, Matthew and Jonathan ask, what pufferfish will do okay in a community tank and or a reef tank? Well, I must say, if you want to keep puffers and you're worried about them getting along with other fish, definitely starting with a smaller puffer will be a big benefit. And for a reef tank, puffers don't feed on coral. It's not part of their regular diet, but they will bite them sometimes to sample them and see, is this good or not? But usually not a huge threat to corals overall. So just start with something smaller. If they do become aggressive over time, at least they are very easy to catch out of the tank. Now Steve asks, what colorful and peaceful fish do you recommend for a 120-gallon reef, and how many can I keep? Well, first of all, how many fish you can keep in any particular aquarium does depend a lot on the filtration. If you have a good sized sump, lots of water flow, a good amount of live rock, you're going to be able to keep more fish than if you have a hang on the back filter, which I don't recommend. So definitely I'd say as a rule of thumb, general rule of thumb, you could probably keep anywhere from 15 to 25 fish in a 120-gallon tank if you keep them nice and small. In terms of what I recommend, start with some tangs. Definitely good colors there. You have yellow tangs, purple tangs. You can do wrasses. They come in a lot of beautiful colors. The mystery wrasses has always been one of my favorites. Do a blenny or two to help keep algae down. You can do basslets like a royal grama. Antheas are a great way to add some color. So that would be some of my top picks. Now Michael writes, I've had a pajama cardinal for over 2 months now, but he won't eat in front of me. He isn't skinny. What would cause this, and how can I increase his appetite? Well, I must say sometimes fish are a little finicky about eating in front of you. Certain fish are more shy than others, while cardinals generally aren't shy. Sounds like you got a shy one on your hands. So I'd try mixing up the type of food, offer a variety of frozen preparations. Maybe arctopods by Reed Mariculture is a really good food for finicky fish, and just try to step back from the tank and give them a chance to eat in peace. Now Spencer asks, when adding a new fish, is it better to turn off the lights for a few hours or just drip acclimate and put them on in the tank? Well, definitely you want to turn the lights off. It gives all the fish in the tank a chance to kind of calm down and let the new fish get used to the water without being picked on as much by the new fish, by the fish that are already in the aquarium. So definitely turning the lights off is a great idea. Now Carl writes, I'd like to put in some nanospecies in my small tank, but it seems there are only certain types that do well in nanos, such as wrasses and gobies. Is it okay to keep multiples of each, or should they be kept alone? Well, it does depend on which fish you're keeping, but cardinals, for instance, do very well in groups. You can keep firefish in groups. You can do clownfish. Certainly a pair of clownfish would be a great idea for a small tank. And for wrasses, if you mix them up, maybe like a carpenter's wrasse and a Melanaris or a couple different smaller wrasses, usually will get along okay in a small tank. Now, Marcus asks, can we keep pygmy angelfish in a reef without having to eat all the corals and clams? Definitely it's possible, but it varies a lot depending on the individual. So I always tell customers, angelfish of any kind in a reef aquarium are risky, so you have to be ready and willing to assume the fact that they may go after certain corals and clams. However, one angelfish is not going to go after every kind of coral in your tank. There's just going to be certain ones they may take a liking to, and you have to start not keeping those and find other corals they don't pick on as much. Now, Marcus also wants to know, what's the most successful way to keep a mandarin fish? Well, mandarins feed on copepods, which are grown usually in a refugium. So they definitely do better in a tank with a large refugium that can grow a bunch of copepods and constantly supply them with that bunch of live copepod food. Now Nathan asks, what fish would be good in a 20-gallon mixed reef? Well, off the top of my head, I'd always recommend a pair of clownfish, maybe Ocellaris or Percula clowns. You could do a royal grama. A small blenny, like a tail spot blenny, would be a good choice to help keep things clean. Then a couple of wrasses, maybe a carpenter's wrasse or McCosker's to add a burst of color for you. And definitely a few cardinals, kind of neat. They hold the young in the mouth, and if you get a pair, you can actually start breeding in a home aquarium, which is always fun to watch. Now Matt asks, what's our preferred method of catching fish that need to be moved to quarantine or removed from the aquarium? Well, definitely I recommend trapping the fish. There's a couple different kinds of traps out there on the market. It takes a lot of patience. Usually it's best not to feed the tank for a couple days, get them nice and hungry, put the trap in the tank during that time, let them get used to it, let them swim in and out of it freely, and make them go in the trap to eat. Get the entire tank used to going into the trap to eat. Usually the one that you want to catch is the last one in, but that's the way it goes. If you have patience, you will be able to get them out that way over time. Now Trevor and Jin ask, what are your thoughts on fish that are considered reef safe, add with caution? Well, I deal with this a lot, and first thing I'll tell everyone is there's exceptions to every rule in this hobby. So for instance, angelfish a lot of times will pick on corals, but definitely not all the time. If you want to keep an angel in the tank, you just need to be willing to accept the fact that they may develop a taste for certain corals or clams over time, and you'll have to balance that against the cost of the coral they're eating, or just be willing to remove certain types of coral and find ones to put in there that they don't like to eat. A lot of angels, for instance, don't go after leather corals or cork corals or clove polyps, so things like that can always do well with them. Now, Dorinda asks, how do I prevent corals from taking over my tank and reducing the swimming area of my fish? Very simple. Prune them, frag them, and trade them. Now, John asks, what methods do you implement for quarantine before you add a new fish to the main display? Well, for quarantine, you want to set up a bare bottom tank, put some pieces of PVC pipe in there to give the fish a good hiding place so they can relax. Make sure to, usually you want to run a trace level of copper in it to help prevent any ick or disease. If you do notice disease on the fish, you definitely want to dip the fish in fresh water. Use a bath. You'll dip them for about 3 minutes and make sure the water is the same pH and temperature as the water in the quarantine. Also, another thing you can do is feed with garlic. We always do that for our new arrivals. Soak all your food in garlic, and that helps to boost immunity and make the parasites less likely to grab onto the fish. Now, Jonathan asks, what is your personal choice for fish to stock a 70 to 90 gallon reef? Jonathan, I've battled with this since a long time ago. And that's why I ended up with a store. I couldn't make up my mind. But some of my favorites, I love tangs. I love purple tangs. I love the chevron tang, mystery wrasse. I like the lineatus wrasse a lot. I like rheologrammas. I think percula clowns are really pretty. So definitely all those would be good choices. Now, Robert asks, is there a rule of thumb to tell how much bioload a fish will add to the aquarium? Well, yeah, I mean, a puffer fish that eats a lot of meaty foods is going to make a lot more waste than a clownfish. He's larger, he's eating more meaty foods. So that's a general rule of thumb. But again, you also have to consider what kind of bioload your aquarium can handle, and that relates to the type of filtration you have in the tank, the amount of live rock and flow and water movement. So both of those you have to consider. The main thing is to monitor your nitrate levels. As long as you're easily able to keep them below 10 parts per million, you should be okay to add another fish. Give it a few weeks, see how they do. And just add fish slowly over time. That'll help prevent you from overstocking. Now, Willie asks, how many angels can I add to a 535-gallon display, and how many tangs? Well, Willie, if you're going to talking about full-size angels, 3, 4, 5-inch fish to 535, you could probably have at least 7 to 10 large angels, and probably another 7, 10, even 12 tangs if you keep them in the, say, 3-inch range. Now, Scott asks, would a 40-gallon breeder be okay for one yellow tang? Well, Scott, we do have customers that keep very small yellow tangs in 40-gallon tanks. They usually do pretty well, but please remember that yellow tangs and all tangs are species that like to swim in open water, and they'll cruise, half a mile down a reef in 15, 20 minutes. So keeping them in a very small tank, usually not fair to them over a long period of time. So if you really want to keep one, be prepared to upgrade the tank or trade the fish back in, within a year or so once they start to outgrow it. And finally, Ron asks, do I need to separate hospital and quarantine tanks? Well, usually one tank can serve as a hospital and quarantine, because since you don't have coral in there or sand or rock, you can certainly use medicine to treat fish in your quarantine tank. So I think one tank, in addition to the main display, is sufficient for most of us. And that's it for today. I appreciate you guys sending in the questions. Tried to get to most of them. And definitely, if you have any others, feel free to contact us through the forum or send us an email. More than happy to help out. Thanks, guys.